Hello, everybody at Digital Gym Cinema. Sorry I'm not there, but here's a video. I'm Armando Hernandez. For those who don't know, I run a blog and a podcast called Trash Mix. Trash Mix has been around for 15 years now. It just started with me writing reviews about Mexican films, particularly genre films. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. And then I started hosting screenings around Southern California and then a couple in Texas as well. So, it's going around. Looks like today you guys are going to be watching a very, very fucking awesome slasher, by the way. Grave Robbers or Ladrones de Tumbas from 1989. Ruben Galindo Jr., the director. He's known for directing several of the Mexican horror films from the 80s, which includes Don't Panic, Cemetery of Terror, which I also really love. And yeah, he's done a bunch of other stuff, action films, and then now he's working on TV, very successful career. His family is, of course, very successful as well. They worked on TV and films as well. And yeah, this is one of them. This is one of those that has, damn, like, kind of like Beth said in her newsletter, and she quoted my review. This is what a Mexican slasher should be like. And when I say that, it's because, yeah, I mean, the cast is just full of well-known Mexican actors, actresses. The setting is in a rural small town, which is very familiar to me because it's like, it reminds me of when I would visit family in Mexico, so this felt very familiar, very close to home.
And what about the film kind of stands out for you or kind of typifies what you like about Mexican genre cinema?
Pretty much just the whole culture and like the setting, like I said, and then just everybody in the movie, the cast. It just feels very close to home, and it's like very familiar to me. This isn't like from another country where I'm not too familiar with, or a culture I'm not too familiar with. So this is somewhere where I feel like I'm at home. This is the vibe that I could really get into. And then, it just happens to be a slasher film. So, I like slasher films. A lot of people like slasher films. So, yeah.
And do you think there's anything about it that makes it recognizably a Mexican genre film? Are there elements to it that you don't find in American slasher films?
I guess I would say the characters, they're kind of different in some ways. You have the sheriff. Well, he's like a captain, technically, of the town. And he's very, like, yeah, he's just different than all the other sheriffs in other movies. He's a really tough guy. You already know he's gonna, he knows how to handle a gun. He knows how to fight. He's not even scared either. He doesn't show fear ever in the movie, which I really like. And I always like to say Mexicans aren't really scared. They like to pretend they're not scared, but they hold it in, and they try to work it out as much as they can. They tough it out, especially Mexican men with the whole machismo culture. And also in this movie, Fernando Almada, who's a well-known action star, drama star from back in the day. Like, you never really see him scared in the movie. I think once you see him kind of shrug, but the rest of the movie, he's just really tough. He's just like, I got to find a way to get rid of this evil entity that's killing my, the people in the town. So that's what I like. It's just that you see the Mexican machismo in there, and then like the teenage characters, or they're not even teenagers. They're like 20-year-olds. They're just stealing stuff. They're not even there to party or anything. They're just there to like steal from the grave sites. Like, they're not there to party. They're like, no, we're gonna steal these expensive jewels from these graves, or we're gonna make a lot of money. We'll party later. So that was another thing too, I thought was different. I was like, oh, this is different. Like, they're not here to party. They're here to commit some crimes. So yeah, it's really different. That's why I was even when I saw it when I first time, I was like, this is a really different kind of slasher film.
Now, you're in the midst of El Santo film series where you're showing them at the Frida. What is the
Yeah.
importance of showing films like Grave Robbers and El Santo in a theater with people as opposed to, just seeking them out online, streaming somewhere?
It's also, for me, it's always been like a throwback. Like, I've always felt like, I mean, obviously I've never got to experience the theater experience with these movies. So it's nice to like do them myself, or if there ever is a chance where someone else is doing it, then it's cool for me to go there. And of course, the theater experience is always very important. You have to go see a movie in the theater if you get the chance to. Whether it's a new movie, an old movie, it's always a fun time. And with the Mexican movies, it's cool, because you get to see these films how they were back in the day played, and then to also share it in a new, in a new setting, in a new era, of movie fans. So it's cool to show this to broader audience rather than just, not this Mexican American audience. It's like everybody that can go, whether you're white, black, Asian, these movies are for everybody. And so it's cool to see different cultures come together and then see this movie and then, see a different part of the world. I feel like Mexican films are always very often seen, or when they are seen, it's very little bit, very, sporadic as well. So it's cool to see either a Mexican slasher or a lucha film. It doesn't matter, it's cool, it's always cool to show these movies to people. And if they're not familiar with the culture, and it's nice to see them to kind of interact with it and be like, oh wow, this is cool, this is interesting, as anything else from another world. I mean, another country.
And what led you to create Trash Mix?
Honestly, it wasn't no intention. That's the funny part. It's just me one day was just on my computer, it's just reviewing movies, like everybody else back in the day was, and on Blogger. And I just happened to remember Mexican films. That's kind of how it kickstarted. I was like, oh, I remember like this so-and-so movie or this so-and-so horror movie from Mexico. So I would kind of add it into the blog. And then from there, it started to kind of pick up. I was like, oh, I started remembering more films. And yeah, it just led me into this rabbit hole where I wanted to see more. I was like, well, what else is there to see? So I just started looking into all these producers, directors, and actors. I would look on IMDb like crazy, seeing what titles I can find, what titles I can maybe buy. It was just this obsession of mine where I wanted to see all these films. It was never to like make it into anything big or anything or do anything with it. It was just me documenting it. That's it. What I was watching, and I guess it gave me a more understanding of the culture too. Where I was 20 years old when I started this, so it's just like, oh, I know a little bit of a Mexican culture, but then I feel like once I started watching the films, the more I started to get more familiar with it, especially from the 70s and 80s and 90s. Where I'm a kid from the 90s and 2000s, so I was like, oh, okay, cool, this is how it was back in the day, This isn't just me hearing about it, this is me actually seeing the culture from back in the day. And yeah, it kind of just went from there, It went from me writing, screenings, and then now the podcast, where I get to talk about these films now on a digital platform.
All right, is there any final words you have for people as we enter into the world of grave robbers?
You're gonna see what in my opinion, is the best Mexican slasher there ever was. That and Cemetery of Terror, but we'll save Cemetery of Terror for another day.
All right.
You're gonna enjoy Grave Robbers. If you're gonna come out there and be like, wow, this was really good. I need to see more. And yeah, you already know where to find me online. Trash Mix on Instagram, trashmix.com, and then Trash Mix Podcast is on Spotify and all the other platforms. If you ever want to learn more about Mexican films like this.